The Sports Shuffle. It is September 14th, 2023. I'm flying Ryan Rango Crystal along with.
Tampa Motormouth Joel Vrone not only waiting, of course, to see how badly the Vikings get thumped by the Philadelphia Eagles tonight on Thursday Night Football, but there's a baseball game of some moderate
Series of
importance.
some moderate importance this week.
Yeah, that's about to get underway pretty soon here with the Orioles of Baltimore and the Rays of Tampa.
Yeah, Rays and Orioles, they are within striking distance with a sweep, I believe the Rays are. Let me get the exact standings up here. Orioles are 2 games up going into the 4-game set with the Rays. Both teams almost a sure lock to make the playoffs, but if the Orioles can sweep this series, they pretty much get a stranglehold and almost a deadlock on the AL East. If the Rays can sweep, they will have a 2-game advantage going into the last couple of weeks of the season. So a very big series. Pretty much anything where the Orioles don't lose this series is a win for them because they will maintain their advantage. But if the Rays can at least get 3 out of 4, this race going down to the wire is going to be very, very interesting. Some breaking news for the Vikings. We'll get to the game picks and preview later, but offensive lineman Marcus Davenport and Christian Darrisaw both will be active for the Vikings tonight. That is going to be a big help for Kirk Cousins in that Minnesota offense, giving him some time to throw against a very good Eagles front seven. Rays game starts in about 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So, yeah, we'll keep a loose eye on that. We're going to talk about week number 1 because there was lots and lots
It,
to
it
talk
really
about.
it really seemed to be mentally still be preseason week 4 with some of those results.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about some guys like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, who were both on my Mega Bowl team, which if you look above my head,
You
is
think
0
you
and
think
2.
you think
Yeah,
you think Chase regretted his little elves comment there?
a little bit.
Well,
No major surprises for the outs for the Eagles. Kenny Gainwell was the biggest news there. So, as the inactives are officially coming out
the
now for the game
goals.
that's in an hour and a half. But yeah, the Bengals looked. If you were to put a parlay down on the Chiefs, Bills, Bengals, and Chargers all to lose in week 1, you would have made some good money because all 4 of those happened. I'm full on in Dolphins gear today because 1, I'm a Dolphins fan. They won. 2, led the league in passing. But 2, what team had a better week than the Dolphins in the grand scheme of things? They get a big win over a team that's going to be a playoff
How often
competitor.
is Tua considered the top QB1 for the
It
entire
happened.
week?
It's happened. I mean, remember last year against Baltimore, the 6 touchdown game? He was great in week number 1. He was great against Buffalo in the snow before the snow started.
Yeah, you're,
He's just
you're
got to stay healthy. And Tyreek over 200 yards in game number 1. The Dolphins, though, already a game up on the Bills and the Patriots. And then we'll get to news with the Jets, even though they won.
to to give you an idea of how absolutely crazy.
As Joel, wow, that's the fastest we've had him disappear. I don't do anything. I don't know what he does. I don't know if he hits a button or if it's just connection or what, but he goes, he'll come back. He usually does. And here he is in 3, 2, 1. All right, Joel, try take 2.
As I was trying to say before space-time continuum checked out on me here, besides Tua being the top quarterback, this just gives you an idea how cray-cray this week was. Quarterback overall number Dose Mac Jones.
Mac
Yeah.
Jones looked good.
Number 3, Jordan Love.
Jordan Love. Oh, we'll get to this
Number
Jordan Love
4,
talk later.
Anthony Richardson.
Anthony Richardson looked very good in his debut. He was the best rookie on the field at the quarterback position this week, and it's not close.
And of course, number 5 must have had a yeah. Okay, well that was last year. This is this year. Put away the massage jokes. Yeah, number 5 was Deshaun Watson, who of course, yeah, that crazy game.
I mean, we can look at the letdowns of Burrow and Josh Allen. Josh Allen
Yeah,
lost games for people this week. Aaron Rodgers did too, but that's a different thing. But I mean, Deshaun Watson was good. Tua, very good as well. I think the Dolphins might have something special this year. I picked them to go to the Super Bowl. They beat a good team. I picked Detroit to go to the Super Bowl. They beat a good team, both in the AFC West. So only time will tell how the season pans out. But as a Dolphins fan, I argue they had the best opening weekend across the board with the Bills, their biggest rival, falling, the Patriots falling in a tough game, the Jets losing their franchise quarterback for the season 4 plays in, which we'll get to more in detail in a little bit. I mean, the Cowboys had a great week. The Bucks, your Bucks got a win.
I'm
Neither one of us picked it, but they got the win.
yeah, I'm still
Baker,
trying
did
to.
you hear about Rashad White coming on, speaking on YouTube that was played on Pat McAfee's show? Baker at halftime said, "Hey guys, I figured out their calls. I know what defense they're going to run at all times. We're going to beat them because of it." At halftime, told everybody, "I've got them figured out. We're good."
Yeah,
I told you, don't sleep on them.
because I know you listened to that game, and you're still trying to figure out how they won when you listen to most of the first half and most of the second half. It was literally a couple of minutes that decided the entire game.
Yeah. Well, let's go into the big news. We'll start with Aaron Rodgers because we've teased it twice. 4 plays in, he gets sacked. It looked to me like the defender landed on the back of his heel as well. That caused a lot of this, but a torn Achilles on the 4th offensive play for the New York Jets. He goes 0 for 1 on the season passing, and he's not expected to come back. There is a very, very slim chance if the Jets with Zach Wilson
Yeah,
can make a deep playoff run that maybe, just maybe, he can sneak on the field for a championship or a Super Bowl type of game. But you got to do that in the AFC with Zach Wilson. That's going to be a very tough task. Their defense is exceptional. Their running game is exceptional. They can give some teams some fits, but at some point in the playoffs, you need someone like a Mahomes, a Herbert, a Burrow, an Allen, a Tua that can put up a 400-yard passing game and just take over. And Zach Wilson is just not that guy.
yeah, there was a weather forecaster, meteorologist, nor'easter Nick, who in the area, who posted humidity will drop faster than the Jets Super Bowl hopes last night. Ouch.
Yeah, there were a lot of not very tasteful Jets 9/11 jokes going around. Um,
Well, did you actually hear? Because I was going to save it for the final thought, but this is one to actually bring to the foreground, since DraftKings is actually getting blasted for promoting a never forget 9/11 parlay. The company issued apology and took the parlay down because it was it was never forget, bet these New York teams to win tonight on 9/11. It was Mets, Yankees, Mets to win at Arizona, Yankees to win at Boston, and Jets to win at Buffalo. But
that's not that bad.
it's just, I think it was just still, when you're doing something like that and it's on Patriots Day, you're having all the coverage, you're seeing all the social media posts, and you're having the majority of it is everyone is remembering, it's being serious. It's not a holiday, not, you can't really call it, even though it's a memorial. It's just not one of those things that,
It's not something you want to promote as a gambling
yeah,
app.
I mean, it's just some things you just. I know somebody was like, "Hey, how about we?" No,
It's one thing for a bunch of people to crack jokes in the privacy of their own friends group or at a bar about things. It's another one for someone to try and profit off of it. Anyways, we're not going to go down
yeah,
that rabbit hole too far, but yeah, Aaron Rodgers out for the season. Jets, the playoff hopes did definitely take a huge hit. And again, as a Dolphins fan, the Jets starting quarterback going down is not bad for the team, but as someone who does like Aaron Rodgers, the player, and doesn't want to see anybody get severely injured, that's just tough. I mean, even
yeah,
if you were rooting for the Bills in that game, you were probably like, "Oh, come on,
yeah.
really?"
I saw another comment was what was it? 4 minutes and 45 seconds Dude was a Jet for 4 minutes and 45 seconds, $75 million contract guaranteed. That's 15.7 million per minute of football, $263,000 per second. Incredible, and that was Kyle T.
Yeah, the trade is official. It's not going to be a first rounder going to the Packers because he's not going to get to 65% of snaps. Um, trying to find the exact terms of the trade if I can. But yeah, it's going to be a second rounder, not a first, going to the Packers next year. And with the Jets now without Aaron Rodgers, could be a very early second rounder. I'm not finding it right now, so we'll move on. Another big Achilles injury is the J.K. Dobbins Achilles injury. He was taken down inside the 5 on a reception, got up, looked like he just kind of tweaked his ankle, almost kind of like Aaron Rodgers when he stood up and then decided he was going to sit down. And then he's going off the field. The limp gets more pronounced. He gets the sideline. All of a sudden, they pan to him after the next play of 2 trainers walking him arm in arm, pretty much no weight on the leg, getting him down to the tunnel. So another big Achilles injury. There were a lot of hamstring injuries in week number 1. It was a tough first week. Deontay Johnson looks like he had the worst hamstring injury. He's going to be out for multiple weeks. But yeah, it was a tough week number 1. And it goes beyond just the poor performances and some of the injuries as well. So let's get into our recaps. I'm not seeing. I mean, Austin Eckler was not practicing with an ankle injury today. Sterling Shepard
I
was the
thought you
only
were creating a new player, Austin
Austin
Ankle.
Eckler, Austin Ankle, yeah. Um, no, Sterling Shepard was the only person to miss practice for the Giants today. That means Darren Waller's hamstring tightness. He has said it doesn't look to be a problem, so we're going to hope that's the case if you have him in fantasy. Raheem Mostert did not practice, but he was vet day. To quote Darren Waller, "Nah, I'm playing." So he's going to be there. Christian Watson, Aaron Jones did not practice. Romeo Dobbs, however, did. Dobbs had a pretty solid game in limited works. Dolphins left tackle Teron Armstead, who missed the game against the Chargers, he was practicing and out of the non-contact jersey. Looks like he will be good to go for week number 2. Brandon Cooks, a grade 1 MCL sprain, questionable for this week, but not a major long-term injury. Other fantasy relevant news, left tackle Andrew Thomas, hamstring, does practice today, so he should be good to go as well.
The entire Patriots offensive line, I think I read somewhere, is injured.
Yeah. Another big one. Raiders wide receiver Devonta Adams did not practice due to a foot injury. Jacoby Myers still in concussion protocol. He got blasted late in that game against Denver. Pretty much sealed the game for the Raiders because game of first down, they were able to close it out from there. Jimmy Garoppolo limited with a foot injury. He's good. He should be good to go. Travis Kelce limited practice, expected to play on Sunday, barring any setbacks. Clyde Edwards-Helaire back to practice as well today. Jerry Jeudy was close to playing Sunday. He is at practice, so he is good to go. And that's, I think, the big ones. Jalen Waddle back at practice. DeAndre Hopkins did not practice, and that will do it. So let's go to our game recaps. Quickly going back to Thursday night. Lions 21-20 win over the Kansas City Chiefs. Kadarius Toney can't catch football, and the Lions look they are for real as they go to 1-0. Chiefs 0-1.
Yeah, I had that Melvin Gordon actually needs to send Tony a steak dinner for taking the focus off of Gordon's rough night. And once again, not even a full point for freaking Sky Moore after all the hype. I know it's just the first week, basically still preseason. As my one thought about this that from the whole Thursday night is do you nab with your fab Rashid Rice or MVS, or you
I
don't
think you
trust?
wait. I think you wait. If they're not already on your roster, I actually dropped Sky Moore after the Thursday game because he was on my bench. I was able to still drop him. I dropped him. I don't even remember who I picked up, but I dropped him for somebody else because I think it was Van Jefferson, which unfortunately wasn't Puka Nacua, who we'll get to a little bit later.
Yeah.
I got the wrong Ram, but I had the right idea. Van Jefferson was the hype, but Puka
Yeah,
Nacua
I know it was
right
all. Yeah, I know. All isn't it amazing how you have one player's all a hype, and then you're like,
Yeah, it was tough. So, but yeah, Chiefs did not look good without Travis Kelce. We'll see what they do in that passing game. I think you wait and see what happens when Kelce comes back because it could be a receiving core like the Giants where you only want the tight end. It could be that way. And if that's the case, then that just happens to be the case.
How about those Panthers and the
Falcons
Falcons?
winning 24-10. Bijan Robinson, first career touchdown. Outplayed by Tyler Algier at running back on his same team
On
with 2
my
touchdowns.
bench. On my
Yeah, he was on a
bench.
lot of benches, and I'm going to say it now. For at least the next couple of weeks, I don't think he should be on your benches. He's viable. If you have great running backs, then so be it. But
Should you try to trade Algier if you can, or is there not a lot of market you think out there
I
for him?
think there's a lot of people who would see Algier as a temporary asset. At some point, Bijan's going to take over the running back one for that team. Algier's going to get touches. We mentioned that in our previews and our mock drafts, and I went after Algier a lot. I have him in a lot of places. Algier's supposed to get a lot of touches, even with Bijan Robinson.
Mhm.
So that panned out in week number 1. The Panthers, not so good. Bryce Young's first start didn't go according to plan. He did get a touchdown pass, though. The Falcons controlled the game. The Falcons, when they have a lead, are going to be a very, very tough team to beat. Unlike last year and past years where you expect the Falcons to blow a lead, they have a two-headed monster at running back that can just milk a game away. It's going to be tough to stop even if you know it's coming. So Falcons 1-0, Panthers 0-1 in the NFC South, where only the Panthers lost in week number 1 after all the crap we've given them in the offseason.
Yeah, Panthers wide receivers are a mess.
Yeah, it's tough, and DJ Chark should come back sooner rather than later. But all of that being said, it's still not an ideal situation. Miles Sanders had a solid game, but they fell behind and had to kind of go away from the run. But he should get more involved, especially as some of the matchups get easier going
Okay,
forward.
so trading Drake London, Ryan. Do you trade him for a bag of chips, Cheetos, or Chex Snack Mix?
Cheetos all day. However, I don't think you can get that much for Drake London. I wouldn't offer it for him. I do want to tell everybody out there he had fewer receptions than quarterback Desmond Ridder on the same team on one target. Kyle Pitts was not good. Drake London was not good. Most of the passing work went to Bijan and Tyler Algier. Like, this is not a team you want the receivers on. He went early in drafts, in a lot of drafts, and I don't get it. I want to see more from Ridder. I don't think Ridder's the starting quarterback all year. I'm almost 100% sure he's not going to be the quarterback going into next year. The Falcons have to find a way to trade up if they have a good team, or maybe trade up just a little bit if they have a bad team and get one of these quarterbacks coming out next year, because this does not look like a team that is going to be competitive.
Okay,
It
so
just doesn't.
uno más cuestione.
All
How
right.
about Sanders' injury? Better performance forecasted for week 2, or
He should be fine. I don't think the injuries are a big concern. I do think you want him. The brighter days are coming. This offense is going to get better as Bryce Young gets more experience in game action. Again, this is kind of like a preseason work week 4 for a lot of these guys that didn't get a lot of time in the preseason. So I do expect bigger things next week and going forward, but it's going to take some time for this Panthers offense to get going. It's not a big surprise that they lost week number 1, and hopefully for them, they'll be better in week number 2.
we go to Baltimore?
Baltimore wins the game, but loses J.K. Dobbins and several others to injuries. A couple defensive players. I know a couple linemen were down. I don't know the long-term prognosis on those. I know Dobbins was the headline, but they do beat the Texans 25-9. The Texans showed a lot of grit. They hung around in this game for a good portion of the time. C.J. Stroud, he looked like a rookie. The Ravens have a very good defense. We didn't expect the Texans to win and be hyper competitive, but they hung around and they fought tough. The Ravens are just too good of a team. Lamar Jackson, a terrible week number 1, but not a big surprise, because remember last year, Houston was the worst quarterback matchup because you can run the ball down their
Yeah,
throat. J.K. Dobbins was off to a
They
great
were
game.
in Lamar's grill for most of the game.
I mean, J.K. Dobbins was running the ball great until he got hurt. And then Justice Hill, 2 touchdowns in relief. Gus Edwards had a couple good plays. But this is a game that it was over as soon as they got up by a couple scores. The Texans just didn't have the firepower. Robert Woods, though, looked pretty good. And
Is
Dameon Pierce was a little bottled up.
Flowers legit?
I believe Zay Flowers might be very, very legit. I do know in our league that we actually made a trade this week. We can talk about that later. I have Zay Flowers on my bench, and I am excited. Him and Addison both had great week ones. I have both of them on my bench. I'm very excited for the process or the future of these two players on my team. Um, I guess we'll quickly talk about the trade because Joel did have J.K. Dobbins on a team. It was a team that I happened to be playing against and beat him because J.K. Dobbins went down. And we'll get to the Giants game later, but he had Daniel Jones and Darren Waller. And, if you watch that game, they didn't score many points because the Giants got shut out. So I offered him Hollywood Brown and Cam Akers for Chris Olave. I feel with those rookies, I'm a little deep at wide receiver, but I feel like I'm pretty deep at running back as well.
You
So
know, I was trying to resist giving up Olave until I had the Deontay Johnson injury. So that was just like the straw meet Camel's back.
yeah, so that's two big injuries that the trade fills the hole. Yes, he's given up Olave, but it still helps in the long run keep him viable. And I mean, honestly, I thought your team was going to beat me. It was on pace for one of the highest scoring teams of the week. I think I'm third. So I was third in scoring on winning teams, and I don't think any of the losers had me beat either. So you were on pace if you didn't have Daniel Jones and Darren Waller crap the bed. Even with the injuries, you
If
had a
I
shot to
pop
beat me.
over to a neighboring parallel universe, just maybe where the Giants didn't suck.
Yeah, you had the opportunity to beat me soundly, and it just didn't happen this week, which hey, that's fantasy football. And trust me, my Mega Bowl team put up 70 points because Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow were awful. And while we're on the topic, let's go to the next game. Cleveland 24-3 win over the Bengals. Joe Burrow, less than 100 yards passing, was terrible. Terrible
Horrible.
in this game. It was an absolute downpour. So, I mean, yeah, you can brush it off. He's coming off the calf injury, didn't get a lot of time in the preseason. Then a terrible weather game against a solid defense in Cleveland, a team that has their number. If
I'm
you have Bengals players, don't overreact.
I'm resisting the urge because in one of the sleeper leagues, somebody actually put T. Higgins up on the trade block.
T. Higgins had one catchable ball. He had 8 targets, but only one of them was legitimately catchable in this game. It will get better for Mixon, Burrow, Chase, and T. Higgins. It will get better. They play the Ravens next week. It's going to be a tough matchup, but these can sometimes be absolute barn burner shootout type of games as well because both offensive are explosive. But the big story in this one was the Browns. Amari Cooper didn't have a monster game. He actually got hurt a little
Yeah,
bit in this one. But
it was fairly balanced between Moore and Cooper.
yeah, I mean, Elijah Moore looks like a potential waiver wire steal at this point. Deshaun Watson in the rain, I thought looked pretty good. He did have a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown. So maybe Deshaun Watson's going to come back and be what he was. He says he doesn't want to be what he was in Houston. He wants to be better. He wants to be the 2023 version, whatever. But if he's as good as he was in Houston, I think Cleveland is going to be very, very happy with the results. And this is a team, if he's good and can stay healthy, can be competitive all season long.
Yeah, and you had, of course, Chubb had a decent day. It wasn't a spectacular, blowout day because that was, of course, no TDs.
No TDs, but he did have a very good game. I'm trying to pull up his stats. Of course, I have so many dynasty and fantasy football leagues, it's hard to find them sometimes. So he had 18 carries for 106 yards. Also, 4 receptions, which if you're in a PPR league, that is not his forte, is catching the ball. 4 receptions for 21 yards. The touchdowns will come, but he averaged almost 6 yards a carry. I think it's a good start for Nick Chubb if you've got him in Dynasty. Even though he didn't have a touchdown, he still scored you 16.7 points. He met his projection in full point PPR. So I don't think you can be too upset with Nick Chubb, even though he didn't get in the end zone.
Smart shuffle, non sequitur. I just had the thought pop into my head that the modern version of sticks, I've got too much time on my hands, would be I've got too many tabs on my screen.
Yep. Anyways, let's move on to the Jaguars 31-21 win over the Indianapolis Colts. And I don't think the Colts fans are too upset with this loss because Anthony Richardson looks like the quarterback of the future. Again, he was by far the best rookie quarterback
he actually
this
had
week.
a 42-yard run called back because of a penalty and still had a decent day.
Yeah, they got stopped inside the 5 late in that game as well to make this. That could have made this a little closer. Richardson got dinged up. He could have went back in the game, but it was over at that point. The Jaguars took care of business. Was ugly. ETN had a good game. Um, Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones look to be the wide receivers of choice. So if you have any Christian Kirk, good luck. But the
Yeah,
Jaguars take care of business.
Kirk was just absolutely left out in the cold. It was all Ridley and Jones for week one. He was the odd
Yeah.
man out.
Yeah, and if they're going to run 2 wide receiver, 2 running back, kind of sets, it's going to be tough for him to get
So
on the
what,
field. Maybe it gets better, or an injury, Christian Kirk becomes more valuable. But for right now, not looking good.
what do you think about Pittman's usage being encouraging low end or high end going forward?
When you have a rookie quarterback who, again, the notes on Anthony Richardson was great athlete, needs some time to get seasoning in the NFL, and needs to learn to be accurate. When you have a receiver like Michael Pittman, he was falling down draft boards because there was fear that Richardson couldn't get into the ball. The fact that he had a very solid game week number 1, he was highly targeted. It's very encouraging. I think he might have become a fantasy draft steal because of the negative buzz. And if Richardson is the guy, he is the next great quarterback in the line of the Indianapolis Colts. Pittman's going to be great this season. He's a great player. I have no doubt about the talent of the player. It was the situation around him because the Colts were, remember, really, really bad last year. But Richardson looks like the real deal through week 1. They play Houston this week, so we'll see if they keep that good mojo up and maybe get a win. Maybe, just maybe, the Colts are a better team than we're realizing.
And we'll go to a game that was definitely a surprise shocker.
Yeah, the Browns was a pretty big shocker too, but this one I think really surprised a lot of people. And Joel, I know it did you because you've been as low on Baker Mayfield as anybody in sports, I think, because a lot of people have said, Baker could be this year's Geno Smith. He's got Evans, he's got Godwin, he's got weapons, he's got a good defense. Maybe, just maybe, he's going to be better than you expect. And Joel was like, no, he's going to be garbage. But
I'm always
20 to
happy to be
17.
wrong, but of course
Yeah.
you got a test coming up in the Bears this week, so we can see
Bears
if
are a bad defense. We saw Jordan
yeah,
Love go absolutely out
if the
of his
Bucks can
mind.
at least do half of that.
So was
It's
Baker was the quarterback 13 on the week. So not exceptional, but solid. 21 to 34, only 173 yards, but 2 touchdowns. Did also have 8 carries for 11 yards, but he got the job done in a 20 to 17 win this
so
week. Justin
so
Jefferson was
yeah.
predicted great, but that was about all
Oh,
the Vikings really had.
Justin Jefferson, he's just Justin Jefferson. But with Baker seeming to want to get Evans the ball, is there any concern for Godwin, or is it just game script?
I think his game script. Let's go to the stats real quick. Evans 10 targets, 6 for 66 and a touchdown. Godwin 6 targets, 5 for 51. So they were still the 2 most targeted people. I'll get to a trade in my final thoughts that I just made. I did just get Chris Godwin, and I'm very happy about it because he is going to be heavily targeted. It's going to be the Evans and Godwin show as it's been for years. So there's going to be games where Mike Evans is the big play threat and Godwin's going to be more underneath dink and dunk, but they average about the same yards per reception. Yes, Evans had 4 more receptions or 4 more targets, but I also think they had to move the ball down the field, and Evans is more of the big play guy. So I'm not too worried about it. Jefferson, though, 9 for 150 on 12 targets. He's a slam dunk. But the encouraging thing, Jordan Addison, second leader in yards, 4 for 61 and a touchdown. The rookie, if you drafted him, you might be able to be playable sooner rather than later. Hawkinson, though, 9 targets, 8 for 35, good in PPR, not so good in standard or half-point PPR. But I think the Vikings are a solid team still. We'll see them tonight against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Question big time rushing for week one. You hope that this isn't how it's going to look after first 4 weeks. Rashad definitely didn't look like it. He looked like he was leaning forward so much on every run, not at the slightest hint of contact. He fell over. He couldn't hit the gaps, and neither White nor Tucker played well. So you definitely have some concerns going forward for Bucks ground game.
Yeah, I think it'll improve. I do. I think a lot of people came into this game expecting the Bucks to be a
The
run first team, And I think the Vikings might have planned to stop the run and say, Baker, beat us if you can. And he could this week.
So,
So we'll see how it goes next week. We'll get into our game matchups and picks later, but they do
so,
play a bad Chicago team next week. I think this could be a get-right game for the running backs. Could be a big game for everybody on Tampa Bay.
so don't sell White yet. Just kind of hold your horses right now.
I don't think you're going to get much for White if you try and sell him outright. You could probably package him with a receiver and go up and get a better receiver, a better running back to a team, especially like I will say this in our trade, I knew you lost J.K. Dobbins. So I did target you for a trade because you needed a running back. You also needed a receiver in Hollywood Brown. That's why I went to you and not somebody else because there was a need. If you have Rachaad White and somebody lost J.K. Dobbins and you're good at running back, yeah, you can package it and go get a better wide receiver down the line. I just don't think straight up you're going to get much for Rachaad White right now.
All right. One more point just to bring up to sort of taking into account the fact that it was the Bucks D. What about Madison?
Madison, it's tough because Madison, you didn't expect him to be great. He did get 13.4 points in PPR. Let's see what he had. 11 for 34, not great. 3 catches for 10 yards, not great, but did get that touchdown. Was targeted 4 times. The Bucks do have a great front 7 run defense. They've had it for years. Remember a couple years ago when Zeke Elliott was still good and they took him out of like Dallas didn't even try and run the ball against Tampa game 1 after the Bucks won the Super Bowl. That front is still put together. So I'm not too worried about Alexander Madison. He's going up against a horrible front 7 again. A terribly tough front 7, I should say, tonight against the Eagles. So he might have another bad week, but he could be a very nice buy low candidate going into week number 3 because better matchups are on the horizon. Because after Philadelphia, the Chargers, who got lit up, the Panthers, who got torched by the running game of the Falcons, the Chiefs, the Bears, bad. Then you have San Francisco. That's going to be a bad week as well. But then Green Bay, Atlanta. So it gets better after this week for Madison. Could be a good buy low candidate at the end of the week. I expect a rough week this week, but no major concern on his front yet. All right, let's move on to the Saints' 1-point win over the Tennessee Titans, where Ryan Tannehill is possibly the worst football player in the league this week. 3 interceptions, really, really poor performance, but 5 field goals kept them in the game. Derrick Henry did not get a touchdown, but did have a good fantasy day, especially if you get the couple extra points from being in a PPR format. He was 15 for 63 yards, a 4.2 average. He was a running back 14 in the league, but 2 receptions on 3 targets for 56 additional yards, 13.9. You expect better, but Tannehill put this team in bad positions. They were passing the ball. They got in some undisciplined false start penalties that put them in 1st and long, which took Henry off the field. Better days coming for Derrick Henry and the Titans. The Saints, however, Chris Olave looked very good this week. Derek Carr looked competent in a new offense. The running game, I think we're waiting to see what happens when Alvin Kamara comes back, but Williams was solid, not spectacular. And Juwan Johnson, the tight end to note in this one for the Saints. And as well, Michael Thomas survived the first game.
Yeah, just Tannehill was absolutely horrid. Like I said, I really didn't want to trade Olave. He's looking like he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver, but yeah, just when you
But
have
needs is
injury,
needs.
yeah, but when you have injuries, and you can definitely really tell that the Saints need Alvin Kamara back. And just my final observation from this game was, how bad a year will the Tennessee wide receivers have if this is what to expect every weekend? Are you dropping Burks?
Not yet. I think you want to see what this offense is. Again, I targeted the Saints defense all over the place this year because they faced a pretty soft schedule and they are very talented. This is a very good defensive unit. So don't take away the Titans' options and say, oh, if it's not Derrick Henry, it's not good. Tajay Spears had a lot of work in this game in conjunction with Derrick Henry. DeAndre Hopkins looked okay. Okonkwo didn't get going, but better days are coming. Again, they're playing in a soft division. The Jags defense doesn't look like anything spectacular. The Colts and Houston Texans, he's going to light up. So I think the Titans will get better. This defense looked better than expected this week, at least for the Titans. So I don't think you sell out on Burks yet. I think you hold him for at least one more week, but I think you need to keep in the back of your mind that maybe there's not enough passing volume to go around in Burks and Okonkwo. There may be better options down the line, but let's give him one more week. Let's not overreact. I know people were dropping 50 plus fab out of 100 on Puka Nacua, and we have to remember Cooper Cup's going to come back in theory at some point, and that volume's going to go down. So don't overreact to week one. Because I know there's people, I have Burrow and I have Chase. So what do I do? You keep
Oh
Burrow and
yeah,
Chase and expect better days.
I saw one post where somebody in one league dropped $72 out of $100 fab for Puka, Kenneth
Okay.
Gainwell, and Williams.
Yeah. Gainwell not playing, so that's a little rough. Let's see. My Megla Bowl team, I can go back and see because that's one of the few I can really go back and quickly see how it went. Nacua went for 40 in that one. And it was the high bid by about 10, but he went for a big amount. Joshua Kelly for 32 and Kyron Williams for 25 because they got a bunch of buzz after week number one. I don't think Kyron Williams is going to pan out. I do think that's still Cam Akers' job. It's just they got in the game script early where the passing game was going. So let's move on. 49ers 30, Pittsburgh Steelers 7.
Right.
This was the beatdown of Sunday until Sunday night. Brandon Ayuk, 2 touchdowns, was the wide receiver 1 for the 49ers. That is a big thing. If you got him and you played him, as I did in our 16-team league, him and Tyreek Hill were the wide receivers 1 and 2 on the week. They're also wide receivers 1 and 2 on my roster. That's why I put up 150 points in the 16-teamer. But not the point. The 49ers looked exceptional. Christian McCaffrey, no surprise. George Kittle, a little underused. Deebo Samuel, a little underused. Didn't need him. Brock Purdy, though, you were worried. I was worried personally about the elbow. Looks like he is 100% good. They torched a very good Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Deontay Johnson hurt for the Steelers is not good, but this offense never got going. They couldn't even get Najee involved because they were down 2 touchdowns right away. And I think the Steelers have to be a little bit nervous. Steelers fans can't be too comfy cozy after week number 1.
Yeah, I know. You listen to the whole where Sirius XM where they basically go round from game to game to game to game. And the one thing I tend to remember from week one was Ayuk is on fire. I'm going, how many times? And it just sort of feels like Groundhog Day. And the reverse of the good Groundhog Day would be the bad Groundhog Day. That'd be for the Steelers. Because we remember before the season, all the hype about the Steelers are going to take the next step yet. Granted, the San Francisco 49ers are a heck of a rough start for, hey, here's a team that was this close to be getting into the Super Bowl last year. So, yeah, have fun with that. But, before the season, all the hype. And all I think about is like the one Talking Head song, same as it ever was. Same as it ever was. Same as it ever was. The Steelers offense was just utterly horrible. Like you said, they couldn't get Harris really involved. Warren couldn't get anything going either. Deontay Johnson was looking like he was having a decent day until the injury to him. He's a serious one. He's out for a few weeks. Yay. Pickens was serviceable. Fryermuth got a TD, so that helped him, but you have to wonder about the sustainability. And then, of course, another late injury for Fryermuth. So all of a sudden, if you're having some hope there, wandering into season 2. And like I have on one of my teams, Pickett's my backup. Just pray your starter does not get hurt.
And I do think Pittsburgh's going to look better in future weeks. It's just tough when you start with the Niners. Brandon Ayuk, 8 for 8 on the receiving for targets, 129 yards and 2
really
touchdowns.
Was in fuego.
He was good for wide receiver 2 on the week. And we're going to move on to possibly the ugliest game of the week. Commanders do win 20-16 over the Cardinals, but
all the Howell hype.
Yeah, couple touchdowns for Howell, 1 passing, 1 rushing, which was enough. The Cardinals do get a defensive touchdown and 6 sacks, so some concern for the Washington Commanders up front. Brian Robinson with the receiving touchdown. I was disappointed with his performance week number 1 because he was a guy I thought week number 1 against the Cardinals, he's going to smash, not so much. But the Cardinals offense just couldn't get anything going, but they still had a chance to win this game. Joshua Dobbs, not bad, not great, but not bad for a guy who had been in town for about 4 or 5 minutes. But the Commanders do get a win, 20-16, and we'll see if they can keep it going next week.
Didn't Dobbs have like 1 fantasy point?
I mean, what did you expect? It's Dobbs. Let me see if I can find out exactly what he had. I'm sure I
Yeah,
can.
because Howell was just average. This in itself was a miracle, given his O line. You had Robinson over Gibson by a whole lot. Terry wasn't scary, but save for a 50-yard pass interference that nerfed his fantasy output, he might have had a little bit of a better day. And yeah, you have some people might be doing a little reaching for Dotson there, especially if you're in deep leagues or somebody maybe overlooked him.
Yeah. Dobbs 1 point, 0.98,
Yeah, because
132 yards and lost some
cards,
carries on the ground.
the Cards are a bad team. As Brown is really the only relevant fantasy player that you're probably flexing or benching unless there's a good matchup. And I don't know. What do you consider a good matchup for the Cards, Flying?
There's not going to be a going. They're going to, well, the thing about Brown, Hollywood, is they're going to be behind in a lot of games and have to pass, and he's number 1. I think he's still a safe play. Maybe not your wide receiver 1 or 2, ideally, but at least a flex consideration. It's going to have to get better. I know the Cardinals are not trying to win this year, but I think he's still fine. James Conner, he got 100% of the work. Actually, he got over 100% of the fantasy points produced out of that backfield because Keontae Johnson went negative. So he had a great week relative to his team. But yeah, it's that might be 2 very bad teams going head to head, and we're gonna move on. Well, the Bears still suck. The Green Bay Packers 38-20. There's a Packers fan and a Bears fan at work who made a bet, and it's all starting to come together, and it's very fun because the Bears fan did not do the math correctly. Jordan Love looks like he could be the real deal. And if the Packers did it again, going from Favre to Rodgers and now Rodgers to Jordan Love, I think you got to just say this team knows what they're doing at quarterback. Jordan Love, 15 of 27, didn't have to go crazy, but 245 yards and 3 touchdowns. Also got 12 yards on the ground. That was also without Christian Watson. So this passing game was depleted. Romeo Doubs had a good game in this one. Justin Fields looked a little lost out there. I got to say that. He looked a little shaky. But the Bears looked really bad last year, and he ended up being a league winner type of guy the second half of the year. So if you have Justin Fields, do not panic. Again, week 1 is an extension of the preseason in some ways. I expect the Bears to get better. They're playing Tampa Bay. Good defense. So they might have to get a little more creative. Only 2 design runs for Justin Fields. That is not enough. So the Packers win 38-20. Did we kill the Packers too early?
Yeah, because you had Rashawn's fantasy value was mostly garbage time. Herbert and Foreman were disappointing. Dobbs led the Packers wide receivers, and managers are praying that Aaron Jones is not already injured, especially after that inspired performance. Love looked good, but keep in mind this was a mad defense, and the real test. It's not going to be the Falcons next week.
No. Packers going against the Falcons, that should be a very high-scoring game if I'm the Falcons defense looked good, but it was against a rookie quarterback in Bryce Young. Let's see how they look this week against Jordan Love and a team that looks like it might be better than we expected. Next up, the Broncos lose 17-16 week number 1. No, we're not talking about last year. It happened again, but this time to the Raiders. The good news is Russell Wilson did look a lot more competent in this game than he looked at any point really last year. Josh Jacobs didn't get going, but game 1, good defense. First time really coming back. It's going to take him a week or 2 to get going. Javonte Williams did at least play in this game, which was a miracle in its own right. Let's pull up some stats as we switch over to the screen over here. Jimmy G, 20 of 26, very efficient, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Josh Jacobs, 19 for 48, plenty of work. Garoppolo had 9 carries for 11 yards, but Zamir White only 1 carry, so it is still Josh Jacobs' job. Also 2 catches for 23 yards. Jacoby Myers was the target in this game, 9 for 81 and both touchdowns. Devontae Adams, 6 for 66 yards, and that was pretty much it for the Raiders. But Russell Wilson, 27 of 34. That's the good news. The bad news, only 177 yards, but more good news, 2 touchdowns. Much better than we saw pretty much any point other than one game against the Chiefs last year for Russell Wilson. Javonte Williams, 13 carries for 52 yards, did get the majority of the work, but Samaje Perine was involved, 8 for 41. Perine also led in receiving, 4 for 37. Adam Troutman was number 2. Cortland Sutton, though, did at least get a touchdown, 4 for 32 in that touchdown. Javonte Williams, 4 catches for 5 yards. So it was spread around pretty big. I think the Broncos might improve as we go forwards, and I think maybe the Raiders are another team we're sleeping on a little bit, being better than we expected.
Yeah, because Jacobs, of course, looked out of shape. Just 8 fantasy points. Of course, there's a reason the Raiders are not exactly known as a running team. Plus, he did hold out, did miss camp.
And the Broncos
So
are no slouch on D.
and Adams still got 9 targets, even though Myers was the sexier fantasy player because of the TD. I would still want Adams over
Yeah.
Myers long term. It's sort of like an Algier over Bijan Robinson
Yeah,
type.
you still want
So
Bijan year round, but for right now, Algier looks pretty good too.
Jimmy G and Wilson were both about the same. I know you have a little bit more hype, a little bit more love for Wilson for week 1. P. Ryan Williams were pretty much split right down the middle. Both were good flexes, but not what you would call good stars. It's nice to see Sutton as the wide receiver 1 for the team, given all of the injuries. So one question is, Humphrey worse than Fab or Ned? You're worried because they're a Bronco.
No, I don't think you go too deep with the Broncos in this one. I think you just kind of roll with
Sort of like
what you know.
sort of like another Van Jefferson with the Rams.
I
Cough, cough,
mean,
right
Jared
there.
Judy's coming back as well next week, it looks like. So I think Judy Sutton, Marvin Mims is higher up the board, and then you've still got Dulcich, who maybe is going to be out with a hamstring injury, Troutman, the receiving work out of the backfield. I just think it's going to be spread around a lot, where outside of the top 2 wide receivers and Javonte, it's going to be a little tough. All right, moving on to the game of the week, and it's not really
Oh,
close.
you mean that wasn't the Giants against the Cowboys?
No. And I remember saying last week, this has got high scoring potential. I said 38-35 was my prediction or something around there. Ended up being
Pretty,
Dolphins
pretty close.
36-34. Pretty dang close, especially with that extra point late. And I said it was a possible game of the year candidate in week number 1, and it lived up to the hype. The
Hi.
Dolphins get the win 36-34, which is big because, again, we talked about Tua and Herbert are always going to be linked because of their draft. One was drafted number 5 overall, one was drafted number 6, Tua at 5, Herbert at 6. Tua, 28 of 45 for 466 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Went
If you're
bananas.
if you're a Waddle manager, are you a little bit concerned
No,
or
478 is fine. It's just when you've got a guy like Tyreek Hill
yeah?
who is just beating the defense time and time again for the tune of 11 catches for 215 yards
Tyreek
and
is
2 touchdowns,
Tyreek
you
is a
keep going
juggernaut.
to the cheetah. You just keep going to what's working. Hey, the Chargers did it to the Dolphins. They kept saying, "Hey, you can't stop our running game. Here, Eckler. Here, Joshua Kelly. Go dominate." Raheem Mostert did get 10 for 37 for the Dolphins and a touchdown. Waddle 4 for 78. Not exceptional, but still serviceable
All right.
in fantasy circles.
How do you solve the enigma of Mike Williams that some weeks he's on a milk carton, some weeks he wins you your league?
Well, he did miss some time, which didn't help in this game, but he's going to be a boom bust person. The most consistent player at the receiver position for the Chargers is going to be Keenan Allen, who went 6 for 76 this week on 9 targets. Mike Williams, 4 for 45. Austin Eckler, 4 for 47, both on 5 targets each. Donald Parham got the lone Herbert touchdown, was 3 for 22 and a touchdown. But again, the running game was the key. Austin Eckler and Joshua Kelly, each 16 carries. Eckler did have a bit of an ankle injury late in that
Is,
game.
is Josh Kelly worth the pickup? More than
Yes.
likely, you'll
I
get him
think
in
he's
Yahoo.
worth at least a sniff and throw on your roster, see what happens this week and next
Sleepers,
week.
sleeper, he's probably taken. You're more likely to get him in Yahoo.
Yeah, it depends on your league. It's the 10, 12 team league is possibly available. The 16 teamer and Dynasty is definitely not. But Eckler, 16 for 117 and a touchdown. Herbert, 5 for 7 and a touchdown. Kelly, 16 for 91 and a touchdown again. The Chargers
Okay.
couldn't stop
Yep.
Tyreek Hill. They kept
Yep.
going with it. The Dolphins couldn't stop the run game. They kept going to it, and that's what made this such a good game.
The question I have to ask, I know as a Dolphin fan, you are probably so utterly, completely sick of hearing this question this week, but I'm going to put on my debate show hat. I'm going to ask it anyway. Is Tua's output sustainable going forward?
Is 466 yards and 3 touchdowns sustainable? Probably not every single week, but I think he's at least a 250 and 2 or better guy most weeks. It's a tough matchup coming up against the Patriots. You've got the Bills a couple weeks after that, and then
Especially with
down the
how the
line.
Pats played the Eagles so good.
Yeah, we'll get to that game here in a second. They do play the Eagles a couple weeks after the Bills, so they've got some tough matchups. But I think when they play teams like Carolina, they play teams like the Giants, they play teams like even Buffalo's defense, they struggle to stop Zach Wilson. So it could be one of those things where there's gonna be bad matchups, and he still does his 250 and 2. And Tyreek is unguardable. That's what makes it sustainable. If Tyreek can go get behind the defense and he get hit twice, he can get 2 touchdowns. Easy. And they have Jalen Waddle, and I still think they're players in the Jonathan Taylor sweepstakes down the line. He is coming off a pup. He can pass the physical now, apparently. So I think this team is going to go all in to try and win this year. And I do think if they get an upgraded running back, watch out. This team is going to be absolutely offensively unstoppable.
Do you have any concern about Quentin Johnson after this week?
He's a rookie. No, it's week 1. You have Williams, you have Keenan Allen, you have a 1 and 2. Rookies tend to get eased in. I mean, we saw in the first half Jordan Addison get out snapped by KJ Osborne. Addison's going to take that job. Zay Flowers was the clear number 1, but usually you see rookies. I mean, Justin Jefferson was fantastic his rookie year. Didn't break out to week number 3. So I do think you're not going to have him on a lot of your standard redraft lineups and rosters. Dynasty, hold on to him. I've been trying to trade him because I was trying to collect picks. We'll get to that later. Didn't happen yet. But I don't think I'm too worried about a rookie after game 1, especially in a game where you've still got their top 2 guys. All right, let's start moving a little faster because we've got some stuff to still talk about, and the game's only 40 minutes away. Eagles 25-20 over the Patriots. They did not look up to par. Mac Jones, though, did look very, very good. I still don't think there's anybody on the Patriots you want to target. Kendrick Bourne was the wide receiver note in this one, and Ramondre Stevenson was solid, but not spectacular. Zeke Elliott looks terrible. But Jalen Hurts did not live up to the hype this week, and maybe it's the Patriots defense very good, but the Eagles didn't instill confidence.
Only question for due to constraints of a temporal nature. What about Dallas Goedert? Seen jumping up and down and
Yeah,
was
the donut.
wide open.
Again, this was a bad week for the passing game for the Eagles. It was a bad week for Jalen Hurts, and Dallas Goedert got nothing out of it. So I'm not worried about it yet. Tight ends are really inconsistent. I mean, Hunter Henry was number 1. In the top 5 was basically no one. Blake Bell was number 4. Anybody know who Blake Bell is? Probably not. It was the guy who filled in for one of the guys who filled in for Travis Kelce on the Chiefs.
Bueller?
So tight ends are inconsistent. I do think he's going to get better. He should have a very good game tonight against the Vikings. Hopefully he does. Because I've got him in at least a couple places now.
For that Patriots offensive line, because all of them are injured going into week 2.
Yeah. All right. Next up, another big upset. The Rams 30-13 over the Seahawks. Looked very good. Puka Nacua with 15 targets in this game was sensational, but the Seahawks second half did not get anything going. The Rams take care of business. Stafford looked very, very good. And if this team is defensively sound, offensively capable, and then gets Cooper Kupp back. Oh boy, the Rams could be a sleeper team this year in the NFC.
Yeah, and this one was just a whole bunch of craziness. Just have a little. Don't worry, it's not a novel. It's only a paragraph. It's a ugly game right after the all Van Jefferson hype. Did you hear how much Van Jefferson hype that there was before going into this week? If you have Van Jefferson, you need to keep him. If you don't have him, you need to get him. And it was, as you said, the Puka and Tutu show. Say that
Yeah,
three times real fast. As
Puka Nakua and Tutu Atwell. Woo woo.
Yes, Williams over Akers for week one. Williams was a Rams player on week one. Akers, as we previously mentioned, he's the Rams player I think you want full time going forward. Hawks, oh my good God, not a lot here. Gino being average. DK Metcalf, okay, but not great. How about Tyler Lockett with just 2 fantasy points for the day? JSN, another player that was hyped to eternity and back barely 3 fantasy points. Not a lot right now for Seattle after week one. I don't think anybody would trade for DK even if they have any injuries.
Again, don't overreact to week number one. I think DK is going to be just fine. I think Lockett's going to be just fine. Uh, Gino's going to be inconsistent a little bit. I think he always has been. And I think the Rams defense might be better than we're giving it credit for after week number one. Week number two, they're playing Detroit. That defense looked good against a Kansas City team that didn't have wide receivers or Travis Kelce. We'll see how they look against a team that's got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and Kenneth Walker. And I think it'll get better. Offensive line is going to be an issue. They did lose 2 guys, but they signed Jason Peters. Looks like one of their guys might come back earlier than later. The other one's going to be out for at least 4 weeks as he's on IR. How to say this nicely? The Giants, well, their score wasn't the worst thing that happened at MetLife this weekend, but it was close as they lose 40-0 against the Dallas Cowboys. And it looked to me like the Giants gave up after the Dallas Cowboys got the blocked field goal for a touchdown and the pick six. And I think it was just lights out. Let's pack up shop. It was only
Turn
7
out
minutes
the
into the game.
lights, the party's over.
I mean, Tony Pollard 2 touchdowns was really the only good fantasy asset
If
in
you,
this game.
if you had given Giants new rules that any field goal would be now counted as 7 points for this game only, and a first down would be counted as a field goal, I think they still would have lost.
Yeah, I don't think they got enough to do that, but pretty much every fantasy asset in this game stunk outside of the Dallas
Darren
defense.
Waller, oh good God, I mean
Well, the
Sack
Giants
Martin.
didn't get anything going, and I mean Tony Pollard was good. He was the only one that was really good, and the rest of the players just didn't have to get involved for the Cowboys. So CeeDee Lamb a little disappointing, Jake Ferguson disappointing. I mean they were giving Turpin some play in the fourth quarter. It was bad. It was bad. Daniel Jones was awful. Darren Waller was awful. There's no wide receivers on that team to speak of. Cowboys. I mean they're a candidate for best team or best start for the week. Um, I don't know if 40-0 is a time we're going to really expect them to do often, but they dominated the Giants last year. They dominated them this year. Let's see what happens next week when they play they play Zach Wilson and the Jets. So eventually we'll find out if this Giants defense or this Cowboys defense is as ridiculously good as they looked, or if maybe the Giants offense is just not a good matchup for the Dallas defense. All right, next up we go to what ended up being probably the biggest upset of the week once Aaron Rodgers
I'm
got hurt.
still amazed the Jets won.
The Jets win on a walk-off punt return 22-16 in overtime after Aaron Rodgers goes down 4 offensive plays into the season. The Jets come back from 13-3 down, helped greatly by Josh Allen throwing 3 interceptions and losing a fumble inside of the 25-yard line. That set up the Jets to take their first lead of the night. Any concern for Josh Allen? I mean, Stephon Diggs had a great game. Kincaid and Knox looked to be involved. It just looked like Allen was a little off, and the Jets defense will do that to teams. They absolutely will make quarterbacks look bad at times. But Josh Allen's one you expect to be better. He wasn't great against the Jets last year either, but you expect him to be a little better than he was last
Top
Monday.
the top three quarterback, the elite quarterbacks, Mahomes, Burrow, and now Josh Allen, all had very big letdown week ones.
Yeah, I mean, when Mahomes had 19 or so points against the Detroit Lions on opening night, you're like, oh man, I thought it was going to be better. He ended up being the high watermark for a lot of the quarterbacks. So, yeah, I it's just tough. I mean, as a Dolphins fan, I'm happy to see the Bills lose. I'm not upset to see Zach Wilson as the starting quarterback for the Jets going forward. He has been told he's the starter for the rest of the way if he stays healthy. So, I think there's a little bit of concern with the Bills. We'll see how they do next week. The Bills, of course, are playing at home against the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that's a get right game.
Yeah,
So,
you have the Bills with any kind of hiccups or losing streak. Do we see any kind of a dissension from Stephon Diggs reemerge? That
I mean, I feel like if Stephon Diggs is heavily involved and the team's not winning, it's going to be better than if he's not heavily involved and the team is losing. So he was heavily involved. He was solid. He and Josh Allen actually did win me a game because they got on the same page for that last drive. It wasn't by much, but it was by enough. And all of that being said, I don't worry about the Bills, but if they do lose to the Vegas Raiders, maybe we look at the Bills a little differently, just like we'll look at the Raiders a little differently if they go 2-0 and the Bills go 0-2. All right, quickly into the picks tonight. It is the Vikings going to Philadelphia to open Lincoln Financial Field for the season against the Philadelphia Eagles. Um,
yeah,
this was a 24-7 game the Eagles won last year in week number 2. It ended up being the Eagles just dominating the game. You're playing Justin Jefferson. You're playing Jalen Hurts. You are playing Devonta Smith. You are playing A.J. Brown. You're playing Dallas Goedert, and you're playing T.J. Hawkinson without fail. Alexander Madison's going to have a tough matchup. But you probably drafted him in a place where you got to play him. Make sure he's not in your flex because you want that flexibility
Thursday
down the line.
Thursday night.
It is Thursday night. Eagles defense, very good. Vikings defense looked better than expected, but still lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield. So was the offense pretty good for the Bucs and they beat a good defense, or is the Vikings defense not so good? I don't know. Only time will tell. But let's get to the pick. Kirk Cousins could be a streaming option, but it's going to be a tough matchup. But Mac Jones was quarterback too last week, so maybe I'm wrong.
It's a tough matchup. It's prime time. I think Kirk Cousins tends to revert back to the bad Kirk Cousins when it's prime time, as opposed to the 1 p.m. Kirk Cousins. Even though I know he sort of got the monkey off of his back last year once. Yeah, it's hard going against the Eagles. I got to pick the Eagles.
Yeah, I got to take the Eagles as well. I think their struggles against the Patriots in week 1 might have lit a fire under them. And we expected Minnesota's 11-0 one score game record from last year to kind of self-correct back to the average this
Please
year.
don't. Let's not duplicate last weekend where 0-1 again.
Yeah. Well, they're on one to start, and I think Philadelphia. Hopefully, this is a good game. Hopefully, there's some offensive points to be scored. But if you have Jalen Hurts, you have these guys, the
You just
Dallas Goedert, who busted week 1.
you
I think you're
can't
getting better performances tonight,
you
and I'm
can't
taking the Eagles as well.
yeah, you can't logically pick the Vikings. I'm sorry.
Now, so we're both on the Eagles. Joel did go 11-5 in week 1. I continue to be terrible week number 1 and pick them at 7-9. Of course, Josh Allen and Zach Wilson combined to make this a little worse by, Bills losing. But all that being said, Joel is gone. So let's see if he comes back real quick. But we are going to move into final thoughts. And for me, again, don't panic after week number 1. It's only 1 week. Some of these guys are going to get better. Some of them won't. You will have to make decisions down the line that are very difficult. But don't panic if you have, again, Burrow, Chase, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. Some of these guys you drafted very highly who had bad week 1s. Don't overreact. Don't panic. Remember, Austin Eckler was horrific through the first 2 weeks, and he ended up being a great player the rest of the way. And keep in mind, the guys like T. Higgins that have a bad week number 1, if they have a bad week number 2, you might be able to trade for him on the cheap and take that chance that he's going to bounce back. So don't overreact to week number 1. And yeah, that's my final thought. Joel.
My final thought would be, yes, once again, AB is back in the news.
Oh
Says,
no.
yeah, he just can't seem to do chill the bleep out. As of course, surfaced on social media that Brown took to his social media. This is from SI.com. Took to his social media to promote his pick of the day on Sunday in partnership with MyBookie AG, in which he decided to lay down $120,000 on Minnesota against the Buccaneers due to the quote disrespect, whatever that means. And of course, yeah.
Mm.
I'm even more happy now that the Bucks won, and they spoiled AB's bet. Because, dude, if you have that much money to lay down on a bet, and as we know from recent headlines, he's getting arrested for missing child support. Got the little issue with the Albany Empire players and staff that he apparently owes some money to and reversed their final paychecks. So, yet here he is dropping $120,000 on a bet to make a point about the disrespect from the Bucks that, yeah, just a lot of us are starting to wonder, is it really disrespect? Did something really happen? Or, especially with all the CTE concerns, especially that we have seen recently with AB, is this something that is all just in his mind? We may never know. And that's my final thought.
One quick breaking note: Puka Nakua did not practice today with an oblique injury. So yeah. Hopefully he's okay,
They're,
but
they're,
not
they're,
what you want to hear after you drop a lot of fab if you did so.
when you're going like straight cash home at time, you're going, oh god.
Yeah. So
Or maybe straight fab, homie, I guess.
yeah. Anyways, that is our time. I am flying Ryan Gophers along with.
Tampa Mouth Joel Verlin, and here's hoping we don't go 0-1. I
Whoop.
can't see the Vikings winning though, but
Couldn't see the Lions winning last week either.
crazier stuff has happened.
Yeah. Back on